First story. 3 years, 4 kids, signs of hope. Kinda a rant more than a question or seeking advice, but open to ideas, thoughts if you have them. My wife and I had a great sex life pre-kids. Then kids started arriving, ta-da, and no surprise the frequency went downhill after number 1 arrived. Had twins for number 2 and number 3 with medical help, and it suffered before and after that due to the stress of the situation. Then still became more rare with the kids arriving, etc. We became distant with so much to try to manage in terms of intimacy. Then there was a spike in activity for a fun summer fall, like pre-kids, which led to a pregnancy for number 4. Been a long stretch and had sex once since number 4 came. It's been almost 3 years and he's almost 4 now. It was kind of like rediscovering how to go about it with each other, but then we just never could find a consistent flow given all we had going on. It's been tough to find time to dedicate to each other to build back intimacy, but lately we've been talking more even with kids around, which led to tonight when we were talking as she showered. Some kids were either downstairs or in the bath. And I asked innuendo-type questions for a bit like need a hand, and she playfully responded. But it felt like only if the younger kids weren't in the bath, it would have went farther. I hope our progress continues, but nights like this I struggle the most because we get closer to who we used to be, then it's days or weeks in between. Flashes but something interrupts us, etc. Update. Fertility treatments caused perspective shifts. Having further talks with my wife. It's been 3 years since our last attempt at sex. Fertility treatments made her feel like a sex worker function over fun when we went through IVF several years prior to that when we had our twins. Anyone else experienced this before? I definitely felt similar at the time, but it faded. Update. Advice for dealing with my father as a grandfather. My mother passed a few years ago from cancer. It was a hard 4 years on my father and all of us. My parents were young, under 60, so my mother wished for him to not be alone. Something they discussed before she passed. He started dating for 6 months after she passed. He eventually found someone that he married within a year and a half or so who is nice, but we really didn't get to know well prior to getting married. They didn't tell myself and my siblings or her children that they got married for 6 months, which caused strife. It's been a few years of us trying to move past some of this, so that we can have a family again. In spits and spurts for varying reasons like COVID, work, kids' schedules, retirement, moving, etc. He recently moved with his wife close to 2 hours away. We have not seen them since the move, which was about 5 to 6 months ago. My father was never the caretaker type and was the breadwinner when we were growing up. Myself and my siblings are not expecting him to be immediately good at watching our kids, his grandchildren, who range in age from 4-11. He's helped in the past with us or my mom around, but never himself for long, and he's not helped much over the past few years while dating, getting married, etc. He has come to games and other events like birthdays. While do expect him to want to spend time with our kids so they can build a relationship. We recently asked my father and his wife help us out when my mother-in-law had to attend to some issues to get her house ready to sell. The original plan was for my mother-in-law to help watch the kids in our house that week. My father agreed to take 2 of our 4 kids for a few days. All negotiated between he and I, so it was not hard on them, being their first time with any of our kids sleeping over in their new home. We are grateful for their help and generosity. He offered for us all to come down and spend the night to see his new home in town when we picked them up. All seemed well when we were there, and I even thought it was good progress in him being involved in their lives. We've been home a few days and I got a text from him and we exchanged pleasantries. I then asked when our other 2 kids could spend some time there before school starts. All of them had been asking to go see his house since he moved. We had even discussed it briefly while we were there visiting, picking the other kids up. He just tells me that it won't work out and to speak to my wife about it. So I say okay and leave it there, then ask my wife. She tells me that the only thing my wife can think that is related is a 1 to 2 minute exchange she had with my dad's wife, where she explained to my wife that none of her friends are watching their grandkids for multiple days. This left me pondering a few things on top of what to tell my 2 kids, who will be very disappointed that they will not get the same non-parent time with their grandfather in his new home. What kind of relationship does my dad want with his grandchildren? Why does he need to hide behind his wife via my wife to tell me why it won't work out? What kind of experiences is he expecting or desiring from us now? I plan to discuss this with my siblings and bring these questions up with him in a conversation. I am curious if anyone had any advice or thoughts on what we could be missing or how to approach him before doing so. Thanks. Update. Could my thickness contribute to my bedroom issues? So my wife and I are seeking therapy. Married 14 years. Most until twins was pretty sexually fulfilling. A kid prior to and after twins, 4 total. Touch fulfilling. Emotionally fulfilling. There were periods we both were not there for each other, which is why we are pursuing therapy. Could my 6.25 circumference be a contributing factor? Was never mentioned before, however as our time together progressed she was not as wet lube needed. I'm not as long as others, 6, but described to her friends as a tree stump. Friends described it as impressive, and after joining the sub I see how. I just don't know how to capture the earlier excitement. I understand therapy may reveal this too. Just looking for other possibilities. Thanks. Update. How did you change? My wife is still lower libido for me. I've changed over the past 2-3 years into the partner she always wanted. But she says there is a physical block still and wants to take it down. We are in couples counseling and she's gone from being a stone when I try to touch her to being warm and receptive. But she never initiates even that. Over the past year, maybe 2 random hugs. Looking for ideas or thoughts to suggest to her as we talk about what we can do. We are trying to set up time 2-3 times a week or more to connect as husband-wife, have multiple children, bringing in poems or questions to ask each other. Update. In therapy, but she's stuck. Married 15 years. Together 19 years, 4 kids. DB for 8 years. Completely dead for 4. Been in therapy for 7 months. Finally getting to her big blocks in therapy. The main issue is rebuilding trust. She talked about being scared about how going down this road may end us. Because if that trust can't be restored, what else is there? I said, well, staying here isn't an option either. The issue for her stems mostly from a darker time for me when I was depressed, angry. I had gone through much over a few years. Mom died of cancer. Loss of us, her and I, after kids. Job loss. Identity loss. Loss of friends over time because we did not have time as we had more kids. IVF. I wasn't perfect. She wasn't either. I spanked my kids back then but was doing it too often, too much. I've since changed. She says I've been the perfect partner parent the past 2 years. It's some road in front of us, but finally stepping into deeper waters, which feels better than just wondering what's out there lurking. I just don't know what to think. I'm a changed man, but she hasn't changed since our first kid. It's a total loss of relationship more than just a dead bedroom. I just don't know what there is to be hopeful about. She says she wants to fight for us but can't get beyond the past. Her words don't match her actions, intent on trying to even reserve time for us to connect. Update. Recent survivor, looking for advice experiences. Advice rant. New here. Married 15 years, together 19, 4 kids under 13. I had a battle with severe depression for about 4-5 years as we dealt with twins, my dying mother, job loss, identity loss on my part, her dying father, and a relationship that was not prioritized, dead bedroom, etc. Over the past few years I have battled back from depression, aiming to be the best man, father, and husband I could be. We started marriage counseling in January of this year. Things progressed slowly, and as we got to things to implement, I noticed my wife was not fully on board with changes activities to help heal our relationship. She says she wasn't fully invested in the beginning as she felt her romantic feelings for me left a few years ago. But after 2 months she said she was interested in healing, but wasn't sure if the romantic feelings would return and was scared they wouldn't return. All said in counseling. We keep discussing things in counseling to try, yet I'm the only one pushing to get those things implemented. We try to go back to times where she lost trust in me to heal wounds, and it was apparently too much for her. So we are about to go on vacation after our counselor asks us to think about whether we really want to continue. She's meeting with us separately then together next week after we return from vacation. I asked me wife if there is someone else. She says no, but something about it did not sit right. So I look at our phone records. I see a number that's been texted to over 200 times that month. I check the number on her phone and it's a guy who's friends with her cousin, but there are no texts in her active list from him. I go about our business with the family trip and check 2 days later and see texts from him. They are obviously previous texts that are unseen, and they are talking about getting together in a few weeks, with obvious signs this has occurred in the past. So my first step after returning from vacation is to discuss options with a lawyer. Do I confront her ahead of their next meetup? Looking for experiences in doing so. Thanks. Update. Anyone restart their marriage? Has anyone restarted their marriage as opposed to fixing it? We both have broken trust with each other in multiple ways. She cheated, but after our relationship was pretty much dead for a few years. I was an angry, depressed drunk who has recovered. We want to move past our past traumas with each other, but forgiveness is a large hurdle. What if we recommit to each other with our new mindsets in place? Any stories or thoughts on the matter? We have been married for 15 years with 4 kids. Recently discussed our combined interest in moving forward in this manner. Want to close out our current arrangement, then recommit with a vow renewal. Update. Building trust. What are ways you've built trust as you continue to reconcile? Update. Struggling to believe. Married 15 years. Together 19, 4 kids. WW had on off again IAP for 6 years. Only saw each other occasionally due to distance schedules. Day was in August this year. She went NC then and has stuck to it. Even after AP reached out once, she told me. It began when I was at my lowest in a depression and we had several young kids. She says it began as an exit affair. Decided she had to leave due to my depression and anger at the time. Scared for the kids. Threw an additional child, mine for sure. And the pandemic, I began to recover with IC from my depression, and have become the father I always wanted to be. Have been an MC since January. Trying now to become the couple we always wanted, leading our family. She's definitely improving in terms of our renewed relationship. It's just hard to keep believing after all this time working on myself to waiting for her to warm back up to being together after just going through the motions with the kids the past few years. Our pace for trying is different, coupled with a busy schedule between work and kids. It's hard finding time to connect deeply. Have gotten a sitter for once a month date nights finally. How do you keep hope alive at a pace you're trying to adjust to? I'd rather have a long weekend to go deep in things, but we just don't have that in the cards at the moment. How have others done it? Update. Trust each other. Roughly 3 months after day. I am feeling low. We haven't been right for years. Basically, we were together just for the kids. After we had twins 8 years ago, our relationship tanked. I've been battling back from a depression for a few years, which made our relationship continue as such for a while. Finally got the courage to ask for marriage counseling this time last year. Started in January. Feels like an eternity of trying to reconcile our relationship. Then I found out she's been having an emotional and physical affair with someone off on for a few years this summer. It started as an exit affair. Then we had a 4th kid. So she stayed. It then became an escape for her. All the while I thought she just did not want a relationship and wanted to be a mother first. She ended it after day. Has been good with it since. We've been better as a couple, but it's like we are both learning to trust each other again. She's trying to trust that I won't sink back into a depression or similar habits, drinking, anger. I'm trying to trust she actually wants a relationship. Why is it so slow and hard to go through this? Update. How to initiate. We have been reconciling for a while now. Been in MC as well. All going well. Talking about re-engaging in physical intimacy as we've rebuilt emotional intimacy well. We both feel it building. It's just that our recent dates or alone time all get interrupted or involved our children. Either we get home from a great date, and they are still awake, or we try to watch a show, spend time in our room, and they'll keep coming in, etc. Or we need to talk about one of the kids in depth, for more important things, not just look what Johnny did today during our time, and it is hard to pivot back to more fun mode. It's hard enough trying to view things from the rebuilding part. How do we separate from the kids more, outside of just getting away for a night? My initial thoughts are trying to make it clear it's not okay to bother us in our room with the door closed, or hiring a sitter who can actually get them to bed. Thoughts? Ideas? Update. Looking for perspectives. So we are about 9+ months from D-Day. My WW has been very truthful and focused on us trying to build a new relationship. She even shared when her AP reached out on her birthday in October. She has not contacted him since it was broken off. The past 2 weeks have not been easy for us, mostly because of myself, who has been drinking more, but also feels alone, in several financial pressures that we were not discussing in lieu of trying to be more positive with each other and our interactions, which did lead to large gains in our emotional and physical intimacy. Several of these financial pressures are self-inflicted, planned. Several others, however, are not planned. Have both really put a downer on me as the provider, and then trying to be the answer for all things in the financial space. There were several incidents that occurred where I did not fulfill my duties as a partner and father. It was all within 1 week, and was not that dramatic until my most embarrassing moment of my life, where I passed out after my wife left to pick up our oldest, and I was caring for our other 3 children. While the environment was safe, I made poor choices prior to that, and ended up being unreliable for them in case anything was not safe. This was a large trigger for my wife, given my depression and drinking and anger issues. Seeing a moment where I was now again an unreliable partner, now, somehow tied to this same time frame, which I knew about, is her AP's birthday. I knew it was his birthday, and I don't know how much it did or did not contribute to me making poor choices. However, I know that my actions could have pushed her more into the space where she was considering contacting her AP, because he was the easy button. Life was for kids is demanding enough, even though I have been on the correct path for 2 to 3 years now. Seeing glimpses of the past like that create feelings of need. My wife reached out to friends saying that life with 4 kids is hard, and she was considering just sending a happy birthday text to her AP. Mostly because it was a milestone birthday, and apparently he had infiltrated her dreams over the past week, which line up right in terms of when we were hitting some major struggles. Whether her unconscious was speaking to her in terms of, hey, look at this easy path, why don't you consider this again, or she was actually thinking about it, remains unseen. We have an open phone policy in terms of knowing each other's codes. She did get somewhat defensive around the time things were present on her phone that I had already saw. Surely, after she seems somewhat concerned, the text no longer existed. Her friends were the ones who were contacted, not the AP. She was asking for their advice, in her words, trying not to be a horrible person, and saying she was considering that. Her friends came to the defense of our marriage, saying, why don't you play this tape forward? Or what's your real endgame here aside from one text message that may or may not feel better after? Update. Looking for some articles references. Hi. My WP and I, 15 years married, multiple kids, are in the midst of reconciliation. One of the things we are trying to work through is understanding how to fall back in love with one another. We both want this to happen, but don't want it to feel disingenuous. Well, I know that they own their decision for cheating. I played a larger role in the relationship and the state it was in before that. So in a way, we are both trying to reconcile the pain that led to that particular portion and recover from the more recent revelations as well. We both independently were looking for articles or other reference points to try to get some perspective or steal nuggets from to help us gain additional thoughts or perspectives. Most of what is out there usually talks about how to get over your ex and move on, or how to get back with your ex, or how do you know your ex is willing to get back with you, etc. All of these things don't specifically address where we are at currently. So I thought I could turn to this group to see if anyone had any references of any kind, be it videos or articles or book recommendations. We both recently were talking about how even within a marriage you fall back in love with each other multiple times. She even read an article that talked about how you have 3 loves in your life. We are already trying to broaden those thoughts in terms of how that could fit our situation, like what if we were both all 3 loves for each other just over time, or how this is a major fallback in love for both of us rather than one or the other, just kind of smaller waves versus bigger waves type of thing. Any thoughts or suggestions would be welcome, thank you. Update. Working on resentments. My wife and I are trying to reconcile and move on both in our relationship and from her affair. It is almost a year from D-Day. We are both in counseling and I've been doing marriage counseling and so forth. Things are much better for us, and if I look at how we are communicating year over year over the past 2 years, it is a profound difference. In our talk yesterday, while we were trying to discuss small trust-building things that we could do as suggested in the After the Affair book, the core relationship issues that were at hand before her affair for both of us came up. It is impacting our ability to grow intimately beyond where we are. Those resentments are my initial follies as a father, and our lack of communication as to where we were and what we needed with each other. Our relationship, was not prioritized within the family, especially after multiple kids, and my depression and anger issues as things progressed and I felt abandoned as she did. This is all on top of my trying to get over the resentment of the affair. We plan on discussing this in couples therapy, but I guess I am looking for possible experiences and what helped or did not help from this group. Thanks.